Cyberpunk 2077 had one of the most impressive gaming comebacks to ever be seen after its disastrous launch. The story was always there, no question. It's why people preached the game was always a masterpiece. It just needed a little more time to get over the finish line before the release. But that didn't happen. This led to the great Edge Runners update and then eventually 2.0, and it added lots of content to the game. For example, the police overhaul that included police chases, made it so police don't just spawn out of thin air, and the addition of max tack at the highest wanted level. The overhaul of the skill point system, where abilities had meaning, did away with most of the skills that relied heavily on percentage points that geared towards damage, health, and so forth. And most importantly, in my eyes, overhauling the healing system where you can have 999 healing items, which makes the difficulty options nearly meaningless. Instead, it is on a recharge system, which is the best idea they could come up with. Every change they made with 2.0 was for the better and added more immersion to the game. They even added the public trans system that people very much wanted, the very thing that was in the trailer all those years ago. You didn't even need Phantom Liberty for this. It was a free update that came days before the official release. Cyberpunk 2077 understood what good writing was. They excelled with relationships with other characters, overall mission structure, and the main overarching story that was being told. The main problem was the general playability of the game. With 2.0, it fixed all of this, apart from some bugs here and there. It finally made Cyberpunk the masterpiece it always was. But what did Phantom Liberty add? Did it make the game better? Did it make itself mandatory to buy along with the base game? The answer is a huge yes, by an overwhelming amount. Phantom Liberty kicks off right after V has their meeting with the Voodoo Boys. V is contacted by a character named Songbird. At this point in the story, V has no idea what's happening. As soon as they enter the gate to get into Dogtown, a seizure occurs, but not a typical one. It seems much worse. This is because Songbird has seemingly hacked V through the black wall and is able to communicate with them telepathically because of it. Songbird is even aware of Johnny and can touch him. I think this is when I knew this DLC was going to be different. Experimenting with new story twists was exactly what this game needed. Being aware of Johnny brings in a whole new level of questions on top of what the base game already had. How did Songbird even know? How did she know that V and Johnny were trying to find a way to live? We come to find out that Songbird works for the NUSA, and of course, Johnny has his own reaction to that later. The basis of Phantom Liberty is that Rosalind Myers and Songbird crash land in the middle of Dogtown, which is controlled by Kurt Hansen, an individual who rules with an iron fist and isn't exactly fond of Myers and Militech. The driver in all of this is Songbird, an extremely gifted netrunner hired by the NUSA, Myers' personal netrunner to be exact. And the only way for Myers and Songbird to be saved and taken out of Dogtown is for Songbird to establish contact with V to escort them to safety. Well, Myers ends up being saved. Phantom Liberty kicks off when we're tasked with locating Songbird and bringing her to safety. The base game had the theme of what do you do with the time you have left? In Phantom Liberty, they flipped it on its head. What if a character you encounter is dealing with the exact same thing as you? Are we going to be selfish and put your life over theirs? Or are you willing to be empathetic, throwing away a chance of life to save another? Or maybe, because it's CDPR after all, through your choices, you screw yourself and the other person over. The highlight of Cyberpunk always is its characters, and in Phantom Liberty, there's a brand new cast for the most part. We have Kurt Hansen, the main baddie of the expansion, depending on how you view the expansion, the tyrant of Dogtown who rules with an iron fist, authoritarian, dictator, but intelligent. Rosalind Myers, the CEO of Militech and the president of the NUSA. Intelligent, rich, manipulative, and surprisingly very good in combat. Songbird, the one who reaches into the black wall and uses its power. Maybe it's better to say corrupted by it. Alex, the NUSA secret agent who was abandoned in Dogtown to fend for herself. Extremely cunning, but also has a humanity to her that brings a smile. And finally, Solomon Reed, the sleeper agent who is protective as much as he is dangerous. But I think it goes without saying that none of this would be possible without the uniqueness of Dogtown and the atmosphere it brings. We wouldn't have the spy thriller feeling without it, because Dogtown is Phantom Liberty, an area of Night City controlled by a crazed dictator that shows no mercy to its population. People with no homes, and if they have, it isn't much of a home. Rarely any medical supplies or help is available in Dogtown, and in the stadium, essentially black market dealers roam. Dogtown is a criminal's paradise, even more so than Night City in general. The one beacon of Dogtown is the Black Sapphire. This is where Kurt Hansen resides, along with his close allies and those with wealth and influence. Dogtown was supposed to be a high-end area for the wealthy along with Pacifica. During the Fourth Corporate War, Kurt Hansen was ordered to withdraw from Dogtown but refused. This is why there's bad blood between Hansen and Myers. In lore, there is a treaty named the Arvin Accord that was essentially a peace treaty between the corporations, a ceasefire. Hansen didn't like this, hence the creation of Dogtown controlled by Hansen and the Barghest. Dogtown is unlike the rest of Night City. Night City is open, large highways, wide streets, and colorful areas that light up the night sky, as well as having distinct districts separate from one another. Dogtown is its own entity. Extremely tight roads, narrow walkways, DIY buildings, unfinished residential areas, Barghest around every corner, and even more dangerous than Night City, a militant government. Dogtown fits perfectly with the rest of Night City because of its differences. The juxtaposition of a sprawling city with the promise of fortune and fame against a district that promises only tyranny, brutality, and blunt propaganda. Now, I'm not saying that Night City has none of this. I'm saying that Dogtown pronounces this significantly more. And what I love about this district is the fact that even though bad shit is happening in Dogtown, people are still protective of their home. If you listen to one of the new stations that has Sasha Grey as its host, she admits that even though Dogtown sucks ass, she won't leave because it's her home. It just makes the district feel more lived in and real, because people of course would be protective of where they live. This is such a random fact, but for me personally it adds a lot of detail. Out of all the characters in this expansion, two are very important: Songbird and Reed. You first meet Reed after Myers tasks V with contacting her sleeper agent, and upon the first meeting you can tell this guy is the real deal, greeting you with a 9mm to your back and asks what V wants. You can of course play tough and get Reed to give you a modicum of respect as you head back to his car individually. From the get-go, you can't trust this guy fully, even when the story starts to get rolling. He's an agent for the NUSA, and as you learn from the base game, you can't trust just anybody, especially someone bought by a corporation. But contrary to what his exterior says, Reed is a very emotional person. He holds guilt from what happened to his crew a few years ago, which caused him to become a sleeper agent. But with that guilt comes protectiveness. He'll do whatever it takes to keep his crew safe and not let the past become the present. Throughout the DLC, V and Reed become closer. Well, a better word would be more vulnerable. We come to find out that Reed specifically recruited Songbird, and throughout the years of missions they have been on, they grew together, becoming closer. So because of the bond that the two share, it's an added stress for Reed to bring her to safety. But what's interesting is the fact that during the conversation between Reed, V, and Myers, Reed insinuates that Myers purposefully didn't tell us that she left him to die by the hands of Arasaka and only contacted him when it benefited her. This brings in a thought of distrust, maybe even for the both of them. Going through the player and V's mind, if they catch on quickly, Myers isn't afraid to lie, bend the truth, or just not mention important information. For Reed, V and the player realize that even though he is resentful of the fact that he was left to die, he still is held by the leash of the NUSA. He is loyal regardless of previous outcomes. With hindsight, it becomes clear here. Do we trust Reed and assume that he wants to save Songbird for Songbird's sake? Or do we assume that he is saving her because it's orders? Even later, we have a deep conversation with Reed after another relic malfunction, and the conversation deals with death and how both characters know what knocking on death's door feels like. And for V, we know the story. The relic is overriding their brain, stealing their life away. And for Reed, it's more psychological. He explains that the FIA sold him out to Arasaka in the name of a peace offering. He wound up in a hospital and had to live as a dead man ever since, just to keep his head low. Dogtown was the perfect place for that. So this brings into question, why is he still following orders after all this time? Bottom line, Reed is a slave to the game. Upon my first playthrough, I didn't really sink it in. I thought nothing of it, and I trusted Reed fully. But upon the second playthrough, I realized that Reed isn't exactly bad, but he is blindly following orders, even when morals conflict with that. But that is what makes me love Reed as a character. He's complex and complicated. You never truly know if you can let your guard down around him. The game does an excellent job at giving you opportunities to do so, but never fully diving headfirst into it. Reed says something interesting.
It was bold. It was stupid. A mix of both. Maybe I just didn't know how to walk away, let it rest. Or maybe I don't know how to lose.
Foreshadowing right here. A subtle one. Reed just doesn't know when to walk away, to let people solve their own problems. Sometimes trying to save a life will end up costing one. Right off the bat, when you meet Alex, her and Reed are off to a bad start. With the backstory we were told before the meeting at the Moth, with Alex essentially being ghosted by her former team and left in Dogtown to fend for herself, thinking she was betrayed by her colleague, it takes V having a heart-to-heart to convince her that Reed is telling the truth and that he genuinely cares about her. We see that Alex also was intrigued by the lifestyle of an agent. She was in the cesspool of a city until she was promised chrome and the thrill, not unlike V, who was obsessed with becoming the best in Night City, with the afterlife eating out of the palm of their hand. That is until a job gone wrong. Alex and V Reed are very similar, siding with the FIA for personal reasons, and I think that's what I love about her character. Reed is your typical secret agent that has a soft spot, some unresolved traumas he has a problem getting past. With Alex, she isn't afraid to air out dirty laundry. She knows the FIA is full of shit and promises jack shit, but she does it anyway because she can't get out. The difference between her and Reed is that she has goals and looks at her future life differently. She isn't a slave to the NUSA like Reed is. In fact, later on, we have a drink with Alex before the mission. She lets us know that if everything were to pan out her way, she would have become an actor. She even has genuine belief that she would retire. And that's so fucking different than what we see with Reed. Phantom Liberty knows when to start the action and when to take a quick break. And with those breaks is when character development shines. Just moments like this where characters can be normal, human, have emotions. Even though Alex's screen time isn't exactly plentiful, when she does have your attention, at least in the slow moments, it's nice. It's a welcome change of pace, just having a drink and a dance, to get away from the chaos that is Night City. Songbird is an extremely interesting character, mostly for the fact that she is the first character we see that can at least partially control powers from beyond the black wall. That means hacking into someone else's literal mind and becomes an apparition that only V can see. Songbird is also a character that seems trustworthy, but you have thoughts in the back of your mind that tell you maybe she isn't what she seems. Songbird knows about the biochip and knows that Johnny's the one taking over V's body. How does she know this? You, I guess, can chalk it up to the heist being the most widely talked about thing in Night City leading up to that moment. So Songbird being an agent for the NUSA, obviously she's gonna investigate as much as she can. But even then, why? Were they planning on contacting V beforehand? How do they even know that Johnny's on the engram? Also, how is she using powers from beyond the black wall and how did she get them? Who's forcing her to use them? Is she using them through her own will and consent? There are way too many questions here to just blindly trust Songbird. An interesting thing to note though, Songbird from the sound of things absolutely despises Myers. When you walk through the Cynosure facility, I believe, you can interact with multiple display versions of buildings in Dogtown. And through every single one of them, Myers says one thing, Songbird says another, with some disgust in her voice.
It was an urban renewal effort, designed to curb Arasaka's growing influence. Militech backed most of the projects.
So Militech sank money into Dogtown too?
That's not what it was called then, but yes.
On paper, urban renewal. Under that cover, military infrastructure development. But abandon all hope of hearing a word of truth.
A bright future, with the right financing. But wars scare off investors.
Wars don't happen out of the blue. This? No exception. Orders were issued. There's the Rosalind Myers I know. Never a shadow of accountability.
A gilded monument to a certain someone's bloated ego.
Takes one to know one.
And at this point in my first playthrough, I had a thought pop in my head. Was this crash a total accident? Was it planned from the start? You could tell from the jump that Songbird wants out of the FIA. It isn't out of the realm of possibility with her control of the Blackwall that she is able to down an aircraft in the middle of Dogtown. Again, this character isn't exactly the most trusting. This escalates when she takes over the big-ass tank that you must fight. It seems here she is sort of being corrupted by those powers from the Blackwall. So this begs the question, what thoughts are her own? When is she not going to be able to control her own actions? Is her mind even her own? And even when you contact her through the Voodoo Boy's netrunner, only then does she admit that she used the Blackwall. This is the first time she mentions it and brushes it off, saying it wasn't important. Songbird, although you can understand just a small amount at this exact moment, is extremely untrustworthy, but that part of her character keeps you wanting more and more. If you want to captivate your players, you have to ask questions, and in this moment, do you trust Songbird? Do you believe everything she's telling you? Do you trust Reed? If he's genuine on wanting to save Songbird, it just keeps building from here. For instance, at the Black Sapphire, Songbird drops the bombshell that she is also dying, just like V. CDPR tries to use the relatability aspect for you to consider trusting Songbird. They pull out every option in the book to do so, and it works to a certain degree. And this is where I have a slight criticism. Songbird continuously says that she doesn't give out important information because she doesn't have time. She uses the excuse repeatedly, and at points it gets tiring. It may be part of her character, it may be intentional to annoy the player, but you can't shake the feeling of, Jesus Christ, here we go again. The whole reason why she's with Hansen is to play prisoner and hopefully get her hands on the cure. To cure herself of the Blackwall and hopefully cure V from the damage the biochip is doing. But how do we know this car fits two people? Again, Songbird is untrustworthy. There are holes in her plan, and it lingers in the back of your mind. This plot point keeps you engaged and on your toes. Again, questions are being asked to the player. Fast forward to a one-on-one meeting with Songbird. You get to understand her as a person, a real person, rather than just someone that promised you a cure. She mentions that she misses home in Brooklyn, smoking a joint on her window, seeing the nightlife at its best, and just taking life in. It puts into perspective how much the FIA ruined her psyche, how much they fucked her life up. I think this fits perfectly with V's situation. V enjoyed the life of Night City until the world was turned upside down trying to understand how to get rid of the biochip so they can survive. Songbird enjoyed the life in Brooklyn just dipping her toes into net running until her talents were noticed by the FIA. She then dances beyond the black wall and here we are. The situations are very similar, and it was written like this so the player and V feels pity, and it works magnificently mostly because of the graceful, possible manipulation. Or maybe she's just a genuinely good person. Regardless, it's up to V and the player to figure it out. We also get a huge sneak peek at what exactly the Black Wall does to Songbird. She mentions that she can understand the most minuscule of details, but she can't remember her childhood. She feels that there's someone always standing behind her, yet no one is there. We get to learn more about Songbird in the endings, so you'll hear more about her there.
Sounds painfully familiar. I think I know how you feel.
I doubt anyone understands this feeling as well as you do, V. You're the only one I can trust with this. Only question is, after everything you just heard, feel the same way about me?
The real meat and potatoes of this game is the setup that leads to the climax of breaking Songbird out of the grasp of Kurt Hansen, including doing enough errands for Mr. Hands to acquire the black Sapphire layout so V and Reed can infiltrate and blend into the party that is taking place there. Also get eyes on two high-profile netrunners that have a business deal with Kurt Hansen. First, going over the errands for Mr. Hands, I love these quests for the fact that you're experiencing the everyday grunge of Dogtown. An unresolved murder, getting knee-deep into corporate desertion, even getting your nose in child trafficking associated with young kids with implants doing sports. You can do a handful more quests with Mr. Hands, but you are only required to do 3. These, I find, are the most interesting. The quest, The Man Who Killed Jason Foreman, delves into the aspect of community within Dogtown. With Dogtown, you don't really understand the sense of community people have here considering how run down and authoritarian it is, but it makes sense. The only thing people have is each other. Jason Foreman was killed by a super soldier, or killer, by the name of Leon Rinder. When you investigate the area, you come to realize that this dude is an absolute psycho, chromed from the feet up and decided to kill people in the community for fun. The individuals had no money to just hand the money to V. The entire community had to pitch in to bring justice for Jason. I love this because throughout the base game, these merc jobs were straightforward when it came to accepting the job and then payment. Here, I feel sort of bad for taking these people's eddies. There's no law enforcement that you can rely on in Dogtown. I mean, there isn't in Night City either, but at least there is something. And with the main quest, you are so caught up in the espionage insanity that you never really take in what is actually happening around you. So with this quest, it's a nice change of pace, even though it's just one mission. From here, V is sent over to Pacifica into a scav den to find the murderer, and when you do find him, he looks pitiful. He is pitiful. What surprised me was there was no sob story, no begging for his life, saying he's sorry. He's just a genuine piece of shit, with no remorse for the lives he took. And it hit me here that not every story has to have this huge meaning. Not every person needs to have a backstory that makes sense for the events that led up to the specific moment. Sometimes people just suck, and this is one of those moments. Though it's obvious that this man's experiencing cyberpsychosis. So you really have no idea if he isn't remorseful because of that, or this is just his personality. You have the option to tell the man to give Regina a call so he can turn his life around. You can just straight up kill him and be honest with the folks back in Dogtown, or you can spare him, get a stash of loot, and lie to the community back in Dogtown. I killed the man. I believe he was a bad person before the cyberpsychosis. I wanted to go through with the job. And honestly, reading through Reddit threads, other people made the same decision. I absolutely love this quest for the simplicity. Maybe I like it because of the subversion of expectation. We have been trained to think that everything has an ulterior motive when it comes to plot points in games. So here, the subversion has no ulterior motive. It's sort of welcome. The next quest I did was Prototype and the Scrapper, where Hands tasks V with finding Prototype Chrome from Zetatech. Well, you end up saving a Zetatech engineer instead, and he has the prototype implanted. We also come to find out that he implanted the prototype and planned to escape and disappear into Dogtown. For reasons we can all sympathize with, corporations in Cyberpunk fucking suck. Not unlike selling your soul soul, your life is owned by the corporation you sign with. Regardless, when you get this man his safety, you have a choice to make. The first option is to just leave the dude alone with this chrome, but take the schematics back to Hands. Probably the worst option out of the bunch in my opinion. The dude lives his life, but may or may not be hunted down by Zetatech. I call it the worst option because later at the same hideout, the prototype got ripped out of him, and now he's left with nothing, just alone in Dogtown, and it's unfortunate. Or you can call Hands and tell him about the situation, which will result in Hands getting the schematics and scheduling a ride for the engineer to get the hell out of Dodge. Or you can just straight up rat him out, but we all chose not to do that option, right? I mean, he's an alright guy, unless he annoyed you that much. I like this quest because of the question you must ask yourself. You getting involved in someone else's affairs. Is it worth it? Usually Night City the answer is no. It will bite your ass in the end. But here, if you chose to help Hassan, things work out okay. All he wanted was to get out of the clutches of Zetatech and dip. If V was in his shoes, would V have made the same decision? For me at least, the answer is yes. So why not help Hassan? And you find out later that everything turned out okay, and you get a decent tech pistol that really isn't worth it. In the Gig Talent Academy, you go in pretending to be a scout looking for a literal child football player. The reason you are in there is to pull some data on the whole operation evading taxes. The interesting part about this quest is the situation these kids are in. You get to see in Dogtown, 2077 in general, trafficking seems to be a normal thing. In this case, for entertainment purposes that everyone seems to be okay with. These kids are outfitted with chrome up the ass. The worst part is these kids are doing it willingly to either help their family or their family's forcing them to do it. V meets this little kid named Tommy who is hoping to get drafted, scrounging in the offices when he isn't supposed to. V gets the opportunity to sit with the young kid and sort of ease his mind of worrying. His family lives in Dogtown and their only way out is to rely on Tommy. This situation's sad but also anger-inducing. In the society that these characters live in, the only way they can get out of the dumpster is to rely on their children, focusing on the financial aspect instead of letting the kid know that they will be okay, regardless of what happens. They aren't focused on being an actual parent. I don't know, I just found this quest enlightening, mostly for the actual things going in Dogtown and Night City on a deeper level. The middle of the game is pretty light as a matter of fact. Essentially, it's just the planning phase before the final meeting with Hansen and go through the plan that we laid out with either Songbird or Reed. The setup of course uses the plans acquired by Hands as we sneak our way 007 style into the Black Sapphire, and admittedly this section is on rails, but that's okay because the feeling of sneaking your way through this impenetrable force works. You feel like you are a force to be reckoned with alongside Reed, that is if Bargus can even spot you. During the base game, stealth was always an option. There's even a skill tree for it, but at least in my playthrough in the base game, maybe it was because of my build, I found it lacking. I never really utilized the system, mostly because combat was so fun. So engaging with the systems here through the confines of the level design felt extremely fun. Hacking a bunch of different things, staying hidden from enemies, sniping fools with a big ass gun, it all felt fun and that's what matters. And moving forward, the party at the Black Sapphire was jaw-dropping through the lens of visuals and sound design. Hearing all the party goers' conversations, watching Lizzie Wizzy perform her song on stage was a bop, and all the neon lights illuminating the area was wow. It genuinely felt like a scene out of Casino Royale. But I think everyone agrees nothing beats the moment when you try to get information out of the Netrunner's siblings. Here, V's goal is to get enough information out of these individuals so when we eventually cloak ourselves into the likeness, just like Alex did when we first met her, things will be as accurate as possible to their personalities. Mostly voice modulation to make V sound like one of them, but also just to get personal information. The game here is to pick the right responses so you don't seem suspicious. From my perspective, the responses rely on common sense, like easy common sense. For example, considering the brother doesn't have the same beliefs as the sister, if you want to get him talking, you have to agree with Aurora and then deflect to him. Then he is required to open up to you for the conversation to keep going. Another example would be when the brother gets suspicious and asks why we all of a sudden showed up at the table, asked personal questions, then went all in. Here, they ask exactly who V is. The trick's to give the truth, but not necessarily reveal who you are. So I said V was a thief that robbed Yorinobu. That's not a lie, but I'm not exactly telling them who V is. But this whole argument becomes mute if these dialogue options don't matter at all. Even then, if that is the case, CDPR did a heck of a job making it seem like they do matter. From here, the road to the endgame is simple. Kidnap the twins, grab their vehicle, and roleplay as them to meet with Hansen. And from then, that is when we get the opportunity to nab Songbird and off Hansen. Seems simple, but soon we'll find out it is anything but. Myers, although her appearance in the story is limited, is a character that you can tell is manipulative from the start, and you wonder what she's been doing all this time while you've been working with Reed and Alex. She acts friendly for the most part when you're with her, but once you get into the facility abandoned by Militech and go to each 3D mock-up of every major building in Dogtown, she says one thing while Songbird disagrees and says another. You must take everything Myers says with a grain of salt. She works for Militech and is the president of the NUSA after all. And in 2077, manipulation and secrecy is rampant. What I love from a writing perspective is the fact that Myers seems trustworthy. From her tone of voice, how she treats V, how she treats those around her, and when you are present, it all screams trustworthy. For example, when a couple of dudes enter the rundown apartment building where V and Myers are hiding out, you have the option to convince Myers to hire these people so they can protect Myers, just in case Vargas decides to patrol the area. She promises anything these guys ask. Quite literally. The funny thing is, later in the game, they're not there anymore. And when you ask Reed about it, all he says is, they're taken care of. What the hell does that mean exactly? Did they get offed? Did they just get what they wish for? I have absolutely no idea. And that's the scary part. It's what makes Myers' character so off-putting. She has the means to make these people go missing if she wanted to. They know too much. I guess it just depends on how optimistic your V is. And for me, knowing some of the lore involving Myers, I lean more towards don't trust this person. Kurt's overall involvement in the story is plentiful, but his on-screen appearance is surprisingly low. And this isn't a bad thing to say in my opinion. You felt the presence of Kurt throughout all of this, whether that be the militia in Dogtown or the Black Sapphire with a rich party. And when you do see him, his intimidating aura comes off perfectly. Now, let's be real here, us players weren't intimidated because V's an absolute tank and probably the most dangerous person in Night City. But like I said, it's the aura that's intimidating. And to add on top of that, he has a sense of charisma that you don't really see with other villains. For example, right after you have a conversation with the twins at the table, Hansen interrupts. Just take a listen.
Dunno. Are you afraid? We're just talking, aren't we?
You're not about to kill us. Got it right?
To be honest, I got tired of the media circus. All the allegations thrown in my face, the bullshit propaganda. Luckily, we can put all that behind us now.
Oh, so you couldn't be happier we saved Myers after your botched hit. Right. Think you believe that less than I do.
I will let you and Reed walk free of this place. In one piece. On your own 2 feet. Consider it a gesture of my goodwill.
A tone of voice of someone that isn't afraid to roll up the sleeves, clench the fists, and deliver business, but while having the attitude of someone very nice, saying, fuck off. Now, you may be wondering why I only spend such little time on those 2 characters and most of the video on other major characters here. To that, I say, although these characters have major roles in the events of the game, they're not meant to be the focal point, and this is a good thing. You'll see why when we talk about the endings. But before that, there's one character that has a much bigger role. More so than I expected going in when I first played, none other than Johnny Silverhand. And to keep it short, Johnny doesn't necessarily play a vital role like he does in the base game, but he is still that voice in your head, guiding you through morally gray situations where his input's helpful. We all know that Johnny isn't exactly fond of corporate dogs. In this case, it's Reed and Myers. There is a moment in the rundown hotel where Johnny airs out his opinions vocally. He mentions that someone hasn't fessed up to something. Usually I would say this is a bad thing to point out because you want to show and not tell. If Johnny were to say that without any justification, players would be confused and their viewpoint on characters would be skewed. But with Phantom Liberty, it isn't like that. From the get-go, you have the feeling like you aren't being told everything from the jump. Someone is hiding something, but you have no idea who. So having Johnny voice that opinion, the same opinion that the player has, amplifies the opinion in a good way. The player is more aware and will pay more attention to what is told to them. It also just keeps your head on a swivel. Tonally, it makes sense, and that's why I appreciate it so much. As a matter of fact, Johnny's opinions are usually spot on in Phantom Liberty. Here, he's reliable, extremely reliable, a theme that's very different from the base game. For example, what he says after V declines the formal induction to the FIA.
Made the right call not taking that fascist-ass oath.
Oh yeah?
Some causes are worth pledging your life to, V. This ain't one of them.
Or when him and V are on the basketball court.
Basketball fan? That's new.
You know what I mean. Another game starting. One where your head's the fucking ball.
Felt the same thing. Something nasty's brewing.
Fucking storm's what's brewing. Don't let the sunshine fool you. You're up against seasoned players, whereas you just stumbled onto the court. These are trained so...
When Johnny gets set on metal at the memorial tree.
When I see those two, Reed, Alex, went through something similar myself.
Got a bond, the two of them. Took maybe 4 minutes and they buried the hatchet.
See it clear as day. Any shred of friendship they've got left will fizzle out. Not right now, but soon. Could have spilled the truth years ago, stayed chums. But no, stubborn old Reed had his orders.
And finally, when V gets surgery for the facial morph implant.
Come on, got iron in your hand. Gotta put it to someone's head. Pull the trigger. The master spy and the agent unloosed. Tragedy, comedy, or both.
I think one of them's trying to dupe me.
No, they're both telling the truth. I mean, might be muddy on the nitty-gritty, but their motivations are plain and clear. Survival. It's her be-all and end-all. That and she's a walking, talking nuke. The kind that keeps making mistakes, never knowing which one's gonna set her off. And Reed? Bastard and me are one and the same. If I hadn't ghosted the army, I'd have become a Reed myself. Live and die by our principles. That's the tragedy.
But to keep this video on track and organized, I'm going to come back to Johnny after we go over the endings. So keep this in the back of your mind. There are 3 possible endings to choose from in Phantom Liberty and an additional main ending for the whole game. Depending on your choices throughout, that will influence the decision you get. The possible outcomes are siding with Reed and save Songbird, siding with Songbird fully, siding with Reed but letting Songbird die, siding with Songbird and then giving her up to Reed. Right off the bat, we see things go according to plan. Alex takes down Kurt without any issue while V and Songbird dip the fuck out of the stadium since she took it offline. Catch is, you can tell Songbird is struggling, looking like shit. You know this won't end well. What makes this ending so, well, maybe sad is the word. Reed calls and essentially says that V and Songbird are enemies of the NUSA right after he explains that he could have saved the both of them, but because we went against them, maybe this is what Songbird wanted, to get out of the FIA forever. Now he wants to off the both of us. Do you see the flip-flopping? Do you see the hypocrisy? I love what CD Projekt Red did here because this is the definition of a morally gray choice. Not on our part, though it can be skewed as morally gray, but on Reed's part. On one hand, V and Songbird betrayed his trust, and in his eyes, it meant trying to off Myers and abandon the team. He did let his heart out to us in some degree. I can see the thought here. On the other, he thought of Songbird as a friend. He also knows that Myers isn't exactly the best person. In some degree, whether he admits it or not, he has to understand why V and Songbird are doing this. What I'm trying to say is, it just comes down to who Reed is tied to, and this gives credence to what Johnny said earlier. Reed is a slave to the FIA and refuses to get out. Even if he was betrayed himself, he is so far up the NUSA's ass that he can't find a way out, at least one where he survives. He feels as if he doesn't get a choice in this. He must take V and Songbird out, even if he doesn't want to. Why else do you think he called V to warn them? It's fucking brilliant. And from Songbird's point of view, from what she directly tells us, she just doesn't want to die. She wants to ditch Night City for good, and can you blame her? Even with understanding that she fucked over a lot of people, hasn't V done the same? With that in mind, it's incredibly hard in this situation to see her as the bad guy. But the truth is, everyone in this situation is the bad guy. Reed abandoned his colleagues because he's a slave to the FIA. Songbird killed a lot of people and screwed over more just to get one shot at staying alive. And V has limited knowledge of everything. Whatever choice V makes has rights and wrongs. It adds on to the statement that Night City doesn't have happy endings, it only has tragedies. I also love the fact that you see everyone's true face during this ending. Myers is a cold-hearted bitch, only wanting to find Songbird and off V, which I'd like to see her try, considering V is a literal fucking one-man army who has the potential to take on all of Arasaka alone. Anyways, but we also see Reed's true face, kissing Myers' ass cheeks. And like I said, regardless of all the things he said about Myers, he's still a slave. Then reality hits. Songbird betrayed everyone, even V. But at the end of the day, what were we really fighting for? Was it really to save ourselves as well? In my head at least, why this ending is so good is that her lying didn't matter at all. I did it for Songbird's sake, and the fact that certain dialogue options can represent that, it makes you feel something. Regardless of all the shit she brought down on us, just having the ability to see her life saved. Maybe that's the point. There's a saying that if you try to avert destiny, maybe that destiny manifests because of that aversion. You'll see what I mean later in different endings. But eventually V comes face to face with Reed. At the end of the day, if V left Songbird to Reed, it would be like condemning Songbird to a fate worse than death. Although taking out Reed doesn't feel like the right thing to do, we had no choice. And in my head, we had to see this through to the end, or else all the sacrifice would have been for nothing. Songbird asked for this, and she deserves to have a choice. Everyone does. There is an option when Songbird tells you that she betrayed you too, you can then betray her back and give her up to Reed. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because for one, this ending will essentially almost be the same thing as the ending I'll talk about later. But second, it just doesn't really make that much sense as a player to make this decision. V murdered hundreds just to get Songbird to safety, and to do that just to give her up it just seems like a very odd decision. I can understand how someone playing the game would be mad that Songbird betrayed V, but from a storytelling standpoint, focusing on V, I don't think they would make that kind of decision. There were plenty of hints before that Songbird wasn't telling the truth to V, so to be surprised here and go back on their word, it's a weird choice. And speaking of choices, another one V can choose is to side with Reed but also save Songbird. The setup takes a way different turn. Here we see Songbird fully get corrupted by the Blackwall AI in her mind. From here, she goes on a full-blown, maybe even cyber-psychotic rampage, taking down the entire stadium while V chases after her, and along the way, V takes out Hansen. Here I love that you get to see Songbird fully lose control once she knows she's in danger of not being able to save her own life. That is her literal only goal. Maybe it's because the AI is giving her these thoughts. I have no idea, but I just love how she fully loses herself after the realization. And this compounds even more soon after you unleash Songbird from MaxTac. This entire section in Cynosure is just holy shit. I've never thought this game could pull off being a horror game, but it did. Just the moment Songbird turns on all the monitors and her eyes are just blaze red, it's fantastic. Especially the music that plays during this moment. Narrative aside, the atmosphere here is just out of this world. Better than most games I play, and this is DLC. Regardless, hearing the true story of what happened with the downing of Space Force 1, was Songbird planning the entire thing but going wrong when Kurt dangerously improvised, it made everything clearer. The reason that she was stringing us along, she had to tiptoe ever so carefully not to reveal that information. She was using everyone from the start just to have a little taste of freedom. But can you blame her? As we heard, it's impossible to break out of the FIA scot-free. You're glued to them for life. With Songbird almost taken there against her will, I can't help but to still side with her, even after all of this. But I think most people remember this ending because of the hiding from the robot sequence, where lighting is super dark, you're being followed, you can hear the battle between Songbird and the rogue AI struggling to gain control. Now I'm a huge weenie when it comes to horror games. I jump easy, I pause a lot, and overall, it's just a struggle to get through, and was no different here. But here, the immersion, the actual fear that was going through my head, I can't say enough that this whole sequence is one of the most memorable in the expansion. Songbird is an extremely broken character, one with ambition that led to isolation, denial, eventual blackmail. Songbird lost a part of herself that she was so scared she wouldn't get back, her humanity. Although Reed was there for her at times, he was also the one that partially caused all this mess. You feel sad and sorry for her. You can't help but understand and try to comfort her. The game does a great job at pulling empathy out of the player, making these characters vulnerable, and the acting that goes along with it. All you can say is wow. These scenes show us that all Songbird needed was someone to stick with her all the way through, no matter what. She wanted someone to keep a promise so she would always have a choice.
Not gonna let you die, Somi. We'll make it out of here. Together.
Thank you. I'll keep this moment as this memory. Just one. Back home, a friend at my side. Before it all goes dark. For one last second, I'll know I wasn't alone.
But V, in this instance, robs her of that choice. In the ending where V saves Songbird, yes, she lives, but she didn't want to. She's already consumed mostly by the Blackwall, her humanity mostly gone. The one thing she wanted to keep most of all, and with that gone, She wanted the choice to die.
Let me out.
So me. I
tried on my own. Don't have the strength. Please. End it.
So me.
Quickly.
I can't.
It'll be over.
That's not a solution.
Is the only solution. I'm begging you, V.
So me. Sorry, forgive me, but I can't. Made a promise.
A promise. Again. You go with his.
No. Wanna believe I'm giving you another chance. So I won't do it, So me. I can't. I won't.
No, please. You're leaving me to a fate worse than death.
Show me.
So, Editor Gnome here, I just kind of got done playing through the other endings in Phantom Liberty. And just to keep in mind, I recorded all of this footage like a year ago. Things happened, you know, that's why it took so long. But now, since the first video released, working on Phantom Liberty, going through the endings again, to try to get footage. The scene with Songbird and V, when V like refuses to end her life, and just like how raw that conversation was, and how like broken Songbird is, and how they're pretty much begging to like die. And just the emotion behind the actor's voice, like just playing this a year later, going through it again, it's rough. It's kind of hard to get through sometimes, because it's just like you're seeing this and you're like, holy shit, like this is like legit, like this is legit acting right here. And I was tearing up while playing it. So I just kind of want to put in this editor's note and just say like, but some of these endings are like, oh my God. Yeah. The theme throughout the game has been being able to have a choice, to die, to live, or have the choice to rely on our friends. So with that in mind, you robbed Songbird of that choice. Did you make the right decision? This whole scene was heartbreaking. In this moment, you didn't want this character to die, but this is a lose-lose situation. You have to think about what's better for So Me, what she wants. Later, we see the FIA take her body away for who knows what. Most likely to keep her slaving away. Reed is just happy that she's still alive. There's a little hope that he'll finally understand that he may have been thinking the wrong way, but it's too little too late. And from here, V has the choice of accepting a medal for their actions or telling them up theirs for what they did to them and Songbird. But when Songbird is begging for her life to be ended, you do have the option to grant her her wish, her choice, and end her life.
I'll be forever lost, searching for myself in endless loops beyond the black wall, not knowing who I was. An algorithm lost and dreaming. The memories of a human, someone else. To exist like this, I can't. Let me die. Help me die, please.
Always been your choice, So Me. I get it now. And I gotta respect it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for everything.
You see this person suffering throughout this whole DLC, and to finally grant her her wish of dying, you can't help but feel some type of regret. And this amplifies when Reed enters and witnesses what just happened. This is when Reed finally realizes that maybe he was in the wrong, that he was so caught up in trying to save Songbird's life, he didn't realize that she wanted it to end. She wanted the pain to go away. I mean, he does tell V that he wishes that he was down there with her, but I take that more as so he could understand why she wanted to make this decision or have that proof. I think a more interesting and honestly more human thing that the writers put forward was that Reed thanked us not necessarily because he was meaning that wholeheartedly, more so that because of the decision V made, his whole world came crumbling down and revealed what was going on all this time. The FIA uses everyone. They even betrayed Reed. So after all this happened, because of us, he sees now that the FIA never really cared about the well-being of himself and Songbird. We even see this in the ending where we betray Reed. And once you think about this hard enough, maybe this is the best ending. Instead of feeding into the idea that maybe Songbird can be saved, V shows her the hard truth, that she may never escape this line of work, the Black Wall. I mean, we literally see in the other endings that when she finally gets her soul back, she immediately sells it off to Netwatch and Mr. Blue Eyes. As fucked up as it is, death brings her peace. She gets to make that choice on her own. And in my eyes, for everyone involved, this is the best possible outcome. But since it's Cyberpunk, there's no happy ending. It's all about perspective. Everyone's favorite ending is different. Like I promised, we go back to Johnny. What he was saying throughout the DLC was correct. At the memorial tree, Johnny mentioned that the friendship between Alex and Reed would fizzle out, that they could have connected years ago, but Reed was too stubborn upholding orders. Well, he was right. Reed is still stubborn upholding orders, even though he despised Myers, even knowing that she wanted to get rid of him, cutting off a loose thread. And for the friendship between Reed and Alex, he was right, but it ended differently than he probably thought. Either Alex dies or Reed dies, unless you choose to give up Songbird in the end. So either way, their friendship did indeed fizzle out in death. And at the basketball court, when Johnny mentioned that we're going up against seasoned players to play but don't get played, he was talking deceit. People lie in this line of work, and you have to be able to sniff out who's doing the lying. As we see when we progress through the story, literally everyone has a bit of lying sewn in with the truth, except for Alex, who is the literal only person who doesn't fuck you over, does the opposite. And when you say no to an order, Johnny has the right of it. We see later that Reed is scared to disobey an order because he knows it will be the end of the line if he does so. And it's why Songbird is being hunted in the first place. When she gets caught, it's a fate worse than death. From these examples, Johnny is the sanest person here. A far cry from what we see in the base game, where he is a very unreliable narrator. And this fact makes sense because of his backstory. Johnny used to be known as Robert John Linder, a deserter after learning the truth behind the intentions of corporations and their wars. He knows firsthand how all of this will end, so once you know his backstory, it will be best to follow his advice. About 90% of the time. Johnny was an excellent character in this DLC. The additional main ending is unlocked when you either side with Reed and save Songbird, or you give up Songbird after betraying Reed, essentially staying loyal to the FIA. Everything plays out the same way. You go to the rooftop of Misty's place, go over what the option means with Johnny, and then lock in your answer. Johnny doesn't want you to pick this option, not because Militech and the NUSA is involved, but because of what it means for him. You will be wiped off the chip for good. No uploading to the net, not going into the Black Wall, none of that. He will be gone for good, and that's what scares him. He isn't begging, but you can tell that he is genuine and it isn't demanding like a dick. He is asking politely in his own way. He trusts V to take his word for it, and if you want this ending, you unfortunately go against it. And when you do, and hear Johnny's cold shoulder, it's sad. He wants acknowledgement, decency, a sprinkling of regret, and an apology. He wants to know that V understands what this means for him, what this decision will end up costing. He wants to know that V at least cared. I'm gonna be honest, I shed a tear here, mostly because yes, I did care about Johnny, but when I made this decision, I was only thinking about V, not him, and that's where I got it all wrong. I don't want to say that this conversation was insanely deep, but it is a final goodbye with Johnny. Eventually, V starts to doze off from the drugs, and during that time, you hear one of the most heartbreaking lines in Cyberpunk.
Think this is it, kiddo.
Guess so.
Promise me one thing, will ya?
I promise. No idea what, but I promise.
Not asking you to never give up. Sometimes you gotta let go. Just don't let anyone change who you are, okay?
Johnny,
Good night, Vincent. Today was a good day.
V wakes up in the hospital with Reed telling them that 2 years had passed and we aren't able to use our cyberware. But at least we got rid of the relic. This hits like a truck because you never got to say goodbye to anyone. You left them all hanging. And what hurts is you get to call them back all these years later. Judy got married and is living a decent life. Carrie is living the dream of being big. Pan Am doesn't even answer her phone. All these characters grieved for you in some degree, but then moved on with their life. In the pursuit of cheating death, you paid the cost. V may have had their life saved, but also lost it as well. They have to start over. In the wake of Militech taking over the majority of Night City, V gets to see Vic. He's happy to see us, but it's clear to see that Militech influence caught up to him. He was forced to work for them. And after that brief hello, V gets jumped. They aren't able to use cyberware. They aren't the same person. They can't stand up for themselves like the legendary merc they were. And to put the nail in the coffin, V talks with Misty, explaining that this is a new beginning, after V drifts off into the crowds of people, becoming like everyone else in Night City. This ending hit very hard, and in my opinion, it's the worst option for V. But just like the devil ending, this ending is still beautiful. Let's break it down. I think this ending is the worst one because although V has her life and starts over, they are now at the mercy of Night City even more. V lost everybody over those past 2 years. They're alone. You could say V will just find new connections, friends. I mean, I guess, but will they ever live up to what they had before? In my opinion, in the pursuit of cheating death, V forgot to understand what the point was in the first place. The journey. Because of the chip, they got to meet Judy, Carrie, Johnny, Pan Am, River, you name it. And because of the chip, they became the Night City legend they dreamt of being, or they fled with their friends in the pursuit of something better. It's just, this isn't what V wanted to be. This isn't what V wanted to happen, and I genuinely believe V would have chosen death if it meant the latter was losing everything close to him. The more I talk about this, the more I think maybe it's not this horrible ending in my head, but for canon reasons, it's what V would think. To summarize, I still can't stop thinking about Phantom Liberty a couple years later. It's simply one of the best expansions to a game ever released, and I think it'll stay that way for a long time. Look back at Blood and Wine for The Witcher 3. They did the exact same thing there. You get to meet characters and forge bonds with them that rival the base game. Meeting Reed and understanding what haunted him every day of his life. Getting Songbird involved and is afraid of letting his team down. Alex just wants to get out of the FIA and finally have a normal life. To get away and finally have a vacation. And Songbird, understanding her struggle of being infected with the Blackwall, her past traumas with being inducted into the FIA, and losing her most precious memories because the Blackwall AI slowly strips them away. Learning about these characters on a deeper level and understanding them, it creates something special. A DLC I'll remember for the rest of my life.